All right, today we are going to be doing function representation. So I'm going to highlight our title of our lesson. This is Unit 8, target number 2. So we're going to take a look at different types of functions and then take a look at the equation that matches that type of function, the table, and the graph. So our first type of function is quadratic functions. And we'll take a look here at the equation for a quadratic function has a highest exponent of 2. So we'll see that the 2 lets me know that it is a quadratic function. As we look at the table, we see our x values -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And our y values are all positive values. So when we have a quadratic function and it's just x squared, like this, our table would be 4, 1, 0, 1, 4 for our y values, and the shape of our graph would look something just like this. So highlight that, please. Our next type of function is cubic. And when we talk about a cubic function, we're referring to something to a power of 3. So the highest exponent of 3. When we take a look at this table, we have -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 are same x values from above. But you'll notice here that when it's -2, it's -8. -1 is -1. 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 8. So this creates a shape of the graph that looks something like this. Our next type of function is square root. So our square root function has a square root over the variable x. So you'll see it right here. And when we have a square root and we try to square root a negative x value, you'll find that your calculator will say domain error. So we will not, our graph will not have any negative x values when we're just using a square root. We will have 0, 0. We will have 1, 1. You square root 1, you get 1. The square root of 2 is 1.41. So we get some shape that looks like this when we have the square root. Now, our other types of functions include cube root. And cube root is when we have the root over the variable x, and it's to like a power of 3 here. So it'd be 3 root x. And we remember when we cube root, we can have negatives. And so you'll see that -2 is -1.26, -1 is -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, the cube root of 2 is 1.26. And so we get a shape that looks something like this when we cube root a number. Our next one is absolute value. And remember, absolute value is the distance from 0. So that's a vocabulary word we need to remember. You'll see the two straight lines represent absolute value. The variable x is in the absolute value with vertical lines. So really important, we notice that it's vertical lines. And so absolute value of -2 is 2, absolute value of -1 is 1, absolute value of 0 is 0, absolute value of 1 is 1, absolute value of 2 is 2. So when we go to graph this, it creates this like V-like shape for our absolute value. And then our last type of function is just piecewise. And so equations are for specific intervals on the graph. So you'll see here there are specific intervals on the graph. You might notice that we have inequalities in our equations. And so this would be piecewise. So these are your notes for Target 2 in Unit 8.